Please join me in Gasho. Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas, Namo Amidavas. Well, I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And, you know, since gratitude is is the essence of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, I kind of think that Thanksgiving is a perfect holiday for all of us. And today we have another day for which we can be grateful. We honor Bodhi Day, Jodo-e, which actually occurs on December 8th. But since we only meet 2 times a month, we always try to put the holidays as close to the date as we can. So in celebration, some Buddhists decorate a ficus plant in their home, which resembles the Bodhi tree, or they decorate throughout the house with strings of colored lights, and the lights symbolize enlightenment. And some people also hang 3 shiny ornaments to represent the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Or they might eat a simple meal of rice and milk, which was the meal that the Buddha was offered as he was seeking to understand the human condition. And I brought some in case you want to celebrate in that way. And some people make cookies in the shape of the Bodhi tree, which is another tradition that some Buddhists do in celebration of the day. There's really no prescribed way to commemorate the occasion, but these are just some of the fun and celebratory ways for some Buddhists. But what is it all about? On Bodhi Day, we honor the day of an enlightenment of the historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, who was born a prince but left behind his life of ease and privilege in order to seek to understand the condition of being human, and in particular, to discern the cause of suffering and how to alleviate it. After spending a long time seeking and embracing various spiritual practices, he decided to sit himself beneath a Bodhi tree and meditate until he would come to an understanding. And he sat for 7 days, and then on the 8th day, still sitting beneath the tree, it all came to him, and he was enlightened. He had complete comprehension. And the understandings he came to became the foundation of Buddhism, the 4 Noble Truths of being human, and the 8-fold path to happiness. After that, Siddhartha Gautama became known as the Enlightened One, or the Buddha. And so we honor that day and that moment of enlightenment that occurred beneath the Bodhi tree on December 8th as Bodhi Day, a day to reflect upon his enlightenment, as well as to reflect on Buddhism itself and to feel gratitude. But Bodhi Day is just one of the many observances and celebrations that we as Shin Buddhists observe each year and throughout the year. I know when I first came to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, it took me a while to figure out what they are and why they are important and how we celebrate or honor certain days. And so maybe, especially if you're relatively new to Shin Buddhism, it might be helpful to know these. And for those of you who have been together and been Shin Buddhists for many, many years of celebrating and honoring these days, I'm hoping that it might be interesting to take a little tour around the calendar year and look at each day. Because as we look at them, we see how all together our observances and holidays and celebrations tell the story of Buddhism and the story of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism as well. So the days we celebrate, some are celebrated by all Buddhists, and some are specifically Shin Buddhist observances, and some are cultural celebrations from the time before Shin Buddhism that eventually became incorporated into Jodo Shinshu. So we just spoke about Bodhi Day, but we have another celebration coming up very soon, and that's on December 31st, Joya-e, or year end, or New Year's Eve. And the last day of the year is pretty recognized throughout the world, often with champagne. But for us, it is a time to express our gratitude for the Dharma and our Sangha. And in my mind, perhaps to reflect upon the last year as we bid it all farewell and prepare for the beginning of the new year. In Shin Buddhism, we celebrate by ringing the Joya no Kane, or the bell of the last night, the big temple bell. We ring it 108 times. This number 108 symbolizes the wringing away of the 108 passions or desires that inflict us as humans, the 108 passions that keep us in the world of delusion. So I won't list all 108, but they include our very human feelings of greed and pride and egoism and more. And so, of course, as we ring the bell and we bid the year farewell, we may also reflect on the Amida Buddha with deep gratitude, who vowed to save us humans with all of our 108 passions and bring us into the Pure Land. For our Sangha, we have our own tradition of playing bingo at the Joya A celebration. And that's always been so much fun. And I'm really looking forward to it this year because we have not been able to do it all together since 2019. Our Joya A service is coming up soon. We're going to hold it on December 15th. So please plan to come, bring your loved ones. We will ring the bell and we will play bingo. And then the next day that we recognize along with the rest of the world is January 1st, New Year's Day, or Shusho A. Like all of our days as Shin Buddhists, it's another day for deep gratitude, especially for the Amida Buddha, who embraces us with such compassion as we celebrate the beginning of the year, knowing we are held by the Amida Buddha. And then we move to January 16 to commemorate the death of Shinran Shonin, this founder of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. He died in 1263. He was 90 years old. And this day is called Ho'onko, and it is the most important observance for Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. Ho'onko means a gathering expressing appreciation. And so it is on this day that we show our appreciation for Shinran and his teachings. After Shinran died, his daughter Kakushini established his gravesite in the eastern hills of Kyoto, known as Otani. It was a simple stone monument, was placed there and marked with the 6 kanji of the Nembutsu. And each year, his followers gather to remember him. 9 years later, his ashes were moved further west, closer to the original grave of his mentor, Honen. But the tradition of the Ho'onko service was initiated by Shinran's grandson, Kakunyo, during the 33rd memorial for him. Every year in Japan, at the Nishi Honganji, from January 9 to 16, services are held. And then on the final evening, on the 16th, Dharma talks by Shin ministers from all over Japan are given, and they go on throughout the night. A typical temple or Sangha service here in the US on this day might include the recitation of the Shoshinge, the hymn of true faith, which outlines Shinran's teaching, including paying tribute to the Amida Buddha, the adoration of both the Amida Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha, a calling for all to take refuge in the Amida Buddha, and the teachings of the seven Pure Land Masters. Then it is followed by verses from Shinran's Sanjo Wasan. A reading or readings from the life of Shinran are also included in the service. In Shin Buddhism, we happen to have a lot of celebrations and observances in winter, and that's good for us in this bone-chilling climate to have days to look forward to as the snow blows and the wind howls. And so on February 15th, we have another one. We celebrate Nirvana Day, or Nihan A. This is the day that the Buddha reached his nirvana, his final nirvana. And nirvana means the extinction of our worldly passions and illusions, the end of suffering and rebirth. It means the journey is over, and this is the moment and the time of perfect calm and peace. For us, it is the time of death. Although the Buddha had already reached enlightenment or nirvana while still alive, this is the day when his physical body died, and he passed into complete nirvana. And for us, it's a day to think about impermanence and to remember him and how through his life, the Buddha showed us how to live the Dharma. And then March arrives, and we know that winter will soon be over. And so Higan A is celebrated on March 21st. Actually, it's celebrated twice a year. March 21st, when winter is passing and spring is arriving, when the trees are in bud and the flowers will bloom. And on September 1, when summer is ending and the leaves are about to turn and fall begins. These are the times when day and night are equal and the weather is even and nature is in perfect harmony. And thus, these are the times we might realize harmony within. And for us as Buddhists, it's a good time to reflect on impermanence as we honor and embrace the change of seasons and celebrate the cycle of birth and death and rebirth. Higan means the other shore, or to reach the other shore, and during the autumnal and spring equinoxes, when we have the equal amount of daylight and night, we're all on the shore, and the other shore for us is the Pure Land. In Buddhism, emphasis is placed on the 6 paramitas, or 6 precepts that define or lay out the path to the other shore. Paramita means growing to perfection, and the 6 paramitas, or the path to the other shore, are dana, which is selfless sharing, giving, offering, generosity, and sila, which is correct behavior, discipline of body, speech, and mind, kasanti, which is patience and inclusiveness, and virya, which is effort, perseverance, not giving up, dhyana, which is meditation and contemplation, and rashna, which is wisdom, insight, understanding. It means to let go of opinions and concepts and to relinquish ourself. Even though in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, we know that we all reach the other shore because of the promise of the Amida Buddha made, he expressed this in the primal vow, we look at these precepts with gratitude for the Amida Buddha who realized the 6 paramitas for us. And so Higan is also a time to contemplate with gratitude the infinite wisdom, the selflessness, and the compassion of the Amida Buddha and the primal vow, or what Shinran Shonin called the fundamental vow, who recognizes our very humanness and tells us there is no need to strive to try so very hard. He said, if when I attain Buddhahood, the sentient beings of all 10 quarters with sincere mind and trusting themselves, aspiring to be born in my land and saying my name, perhaps even 10 times, should not be born there, may I not attain supreme enlightenment. And so now we move on to April 8th, another birthday celebration, which is the birthday of the Buddha. We call it Hanamatsuri. The Buddha was born over 2,500 years ago, and according to tradition, Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who became the Buddha, was born in the Lumbini garden. It is said that when he was born, a sweet rain sprinkled down to wash the baby, and at that exact moment, all the flowers burst into bloom. And so on April 8th, we replicate the wondrous day with a flower shrine called Hanamido on the altar. And that represents the Lumbini garden with a little baby inside, a little Shakyamuni who points with his right hand toward the heavens and his left hand towards the earth. And we each pour sweet tea over the baby to represent the sweet rain and the joy that surrounds us, the joy in his birth. And right after that, on May 21, we have another birthday celebration, Gotane, the birthday of Shinran Shonin. Shinran Shonin was born in the outskirts of Kyoto in 1173, and he joined the Tendai ministry on Mount Hiei at the age of 9. He stayed there for 20 years of traditional Buddhist training. But in 1201, at the age of 29, the course of Shinran's life changed as a result of his encounter with the great master Honen Shonin. Honen was teaching the Nembutsu, a simple practice which all could perform, but which also had deep roots in Buddhist religious tradition. The immense popularity of his teaching drew the sharp disapproval of other contending sects, and in 1207, the government issued a proclamation banning the teaching of the Nembutsu. Honen was exiled to Tosa in Shikoku and Shinran to Echigo, which is present-day Nagata Prefecture. The teacher and the disciple were never to see each other again, but Shinran continued to develop the doctrine of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, which emphasizes Shinjin, or faith, which arises in the recitation of the name of Amida Buddha. And so we celebrate his birth with a service that may include readings of his writings and a message about his life, and sometimes it's just fun if we have birthday cake with it too. And then on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, which ends up being around late July and early August, Obon is celebrated in Japan for 3 days. And here in our Sangha, we celebrate one really fun day. Obon is a combination of ancient Japanese cultural beliefs and tradition that has been incorporated into Shin Buddhism. So the Buddhist background is that Obon comes from the story of Mokuren, a disciple of the Buddha who missed his deceased mother. And so he used his supernatural powers to look upon her, only to discover that she had fallen into the realms of the hungry ghosts and was suffering. Deeply distressed, he approached the Buddha and asked how he could release his mother from this realm. And the Buddha instructed him to make offerings to the many Buddhist monks who had just completed their summer retreat on the 15th day of the 7th month. So Mokuren did this, and while doing so, his heart opened as he began to see the true nature of his own dear mother's past selflessness. He finally became aware of all the sacrifices she had made for him during her lifetime. And once the offerings were complete, Mokuren happily saw his mother's release, and filled with joy, he began to dance, a dance of gratitude for her many kindnesses in life and gratitude for her release from suffering. And from this dance of joy comes the Bon Odori, or bone dance, a time during which ancestors and their sacrifices are remembered and appreciated. But before Buddhism even came to Japan, the people believed that during this time, their beloved deceased ancestors make an annual return home. And I always like how Reverend Ron explains it, that it isn't if they're in your house and you bump up against them when you're cooking or cleaning, but that or in your daily life, but it's more like they're simply nearby, they're connected to us, as if they're hanging out on our porch, and we feel them with us. And we think about them, and we are reminded that we are here because of all who came before us. And so we enjoy those days with deep gratitude for those who came before us, for those we have loved and lost. And then after they have been with us for 3 days, it's time for them to leave. And so we gently and lovingly send them back to the spirit world by lighting a candle or a lantern and placing it in water, maybe a river, so that the current will guide them gently to make their way back. On Obon, we as Shin Buddhists celebrate the knowledge that they are in the Pure Land. And so like Mokuren, we dance with joy. And of course, feasting is part of it as well. In our Sangha, we have a special service outside at the pavilion at Beard's Plaisance near Lake Harriet. And several generations of families come and we dance and we eat. And so we unite with the living as well. And August is also a time when we especially remember those who have passed away since the last Obon, and that part is called Hatsubon. And then September rolls around, we celebrate Higan-e, the autumn equinox. And just to put in here that we also remember the departed members of our Sangha who have passed away with a perpetual memorial service, Aitaikyo, in November, for our ancestors in the Sangha who lived and died as Buddhists. This tradition began during the Edo period in Japan, and so we continue it. Aitaikyo is a Japanese word and short for Aitai Dokyo. I hope I'm saying it right. Aitai means perpetual, and Dokyo means reading sutras, the perpetual memorial service. And therefore, this service is observed with the hope that a temple or Sangha will continue to perpetually into perpetuity, and that the Buddha Dharma will be transmitted to future generations. We have the opportunity to listen to the Dharma today because of all the people before us who have sustained the temples and the Sanghas. And so this service honors their contribution for the growth of our Sangha, all those who lived and died as Buddhists. And in holding this service in which we hear the Dharma, we are also providing the opportunity to listen to Buddhist teachings after we have passed away. It's a beautiful connecting of the past, the present, and future generations together. And one of the greatest gifts that we can give is to continue passing down the Dharma. And by continually having these services, we promise to keep it going. Remembering loved ones each month is also part of our service, and so we have a monthly memorial service, as we did today, in which we read the names of those who passed in that month. And then in November, we honor Ashini and Kakushini. Ashini was the wife of Shinran, and they regarded one another, Ashini and Shinran, they regarded each other as bodhisattvas, which tells us about the esteem in which Ashini was held by Shinran and others. And we honor Kakushini, the daughter, who took matters into her own hands and established this memorial site, which ultimately began the establishment of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And we dedicate a service to remembering them, for Jodo Shinshu Buddhism may not have continued if it were not for these women. This was the focus of our last service, and on that day, we usually hear a Dharma talk about the life of the wife and daughter of Shinran Shonin, and we're moved to gratitude from them as well as for the dedication of all women in Shin Buddhism, who are a vital and equal part of every temple and Sangha. And so we've come full circle. We've covered the year of celebrations and observances for Shin Buddhism. There are a lot of days for which gratitude is right at the top of the list. It is the heart of Jodo Shinshu. And so back to the here and now, without this day, Bodhi Day, there would be no Buddhism. There would be no Jodo Shinshu. And none of us would be in this room together. And so indeed, this is a day for deep gratitude. Happy Bodhi Day, and please join me in Gasho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.